finally, a source of raw, real, and honest information on healthcare issues that matter most. Welcome to BS Free MD. From the latest medical information to how to stay sane as a doctor or a patient, no subject is taboo and no BS is allowed. Now, let's welcome your hosts, Doctors May and Tim Hindmarsh.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of BS Free MD with your co-hosts, May and
Tim.
May and Tim Hindmarsh.
Doctors.
Yes. There
you go. I worked hard for that degree, and I deserve the respect. Like Barbara Boxer worked very hard to become a senator. So you should call her Senator Boxer.
All right.
Not just bit. I didn't say it, sorry.
All right, sir, doctor, whatever it is, your highness. This episode is one of our fun multi-guest episodes that we partner with Rick Dancer from the Get Real with Rick Dancer show. And he joins us along with one of our guests. And today we're talking about kids gun safety, and we're calling it Lock and Learn with Derek LeBlanc and Rick Dancer. And so as what we want to really get to in this episode is ask Derek some expertise and questions about because you're a professional firearms instructor and the founder and president of the Kids Safe Foundation. So welcome, Derek, to the show, and welcome back, Rick.
Hey, thanks, man. Hi, Derek. How you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. To start off, Derek, just kind of go through your creds. I know you've been very involved in firearm safety, in firearm training. May and I have done a little bit of that, so we're kind of at least versed in that world, and then how that kind of moved into what your big passion, which is childhood accident prevention, which obviously is something all of us, regardless of what we think about guns, where we are in the political spectrum, can 100% get behind.
Absolutely. So, a little bit about me. So I started shooting, my first BB gun I got at 3 years old from my father. I got my first shotgun at 5 years old. And so that kind of put me on this path to gun ownership and the love of the shooting sports. I used to hunt. And so back in 2013, I was put in a position where I needed a gun. And I didn't have a gun. And so I was in a very dangerous situation where I caught somebody breaking into my vehicle, and I put him on the ground. I fought with him for about 10 minutes until my girlfriend at the time came out and saved me with a shotgun. And so from that point, I became an advocate for our 2A rights, also became an instructor. And then, early 2014, I realized I was potentially exposing, kids to an accident inside the home. And so I started looking at programs, and, there's one by the NRA, but being from Eugene, Oregon, I was concerned about how well received it'd be. And so I started developing my own. So you guys know what I'm talking about.
I don't understand. What do you mean, Derek? Can you be more clear?
Well, I try to be very apolitical with my approach, and obviously the NRA has done some good stuff in the past, but it's outdated. And so the development of our program took about 2 years, and we became a nonprofit in 2016, and now we've reached over 28,000 kids in 5 states and taught them life-saving skills on what to do if they come across an unsecured firearm.
Oh, outstanding. So give us a little background as far as statistics on childhood firearm, accidents, deaths, etc. We're doctors, so we call morbidity and mortality. That's kind of how.
Absolutely. So, the trickiest part is where you get your data from. Obviously CDC, typically I like to cite them. FBI has good data. A lot of sources, people that don't necessarily, align with us politically, they like to cite the Gun Violence Archive as this reputable source. And I don't think it's a reputable source. I think there's a lot of information that's either misdirected or it's inflated. And so typically about right now, we're losing on average about a kid a day across the country to a firearms accident, which I called an accident, but it's really negligence. It's how did that kid come in contact with the firearm? Why wasn't it properly stored, and why wasn't the kid educated? And so there's a lot that goes into it. Part of the problem with the CDC data is they're tracking kids, and they're classifying them up to 19 years old, so that's another thing that's really kind of skewing the data when it comes to how many kids are truly getting hurt with a firearm. And obviously we don't want to see a single kid get hurt. This is, I don't care if you're 19 or 6, like I want to protect everyone. And so it's just, we have to be able to have this conversation in a way where the people with the experience can have the microphone, and it's not the special interest groups, it's not the red shirts, it's people that are actually involved in providing solutions to the safety of our kids. So that's what we're trying to do, and that's why we're glad to be here to kind of talk about that with you guys.
So what's the biggest mistake that people make? I mean, like, what causes the most incidents?
Typically it's complacency. It's always the parents that say it would never be my kid. And I hear that very, very, oh, well, my kid wouldn't do that, but I would be concerned about your kid's friend doing that. And so your kid might be really, really good because you've trained your kid, you've worked with your kids, you talk to your kids about guns, but we don't know about Billy's dad. And Billy's dad might have the gun just laying around where Billy comes in contact with it and wants to show it to your son. And that's how somebody gets hurt. Happens far too often.
How do you work around that in the Kids Safe program or anywhere else? Like, how do you deal with, teaching kids what to do when they're with other kids, with guns that don't know how to handle them safely?
Well, so, part of what we're doing is I call them little force multipliers. So the kids that come into our classes, we're teaching them about how to be disciplined. We're teaching them about how to be future leaders. And so there's always things that come away from our classes. And so, we want to teach those kids that come to our classes directly that they're the force multipliers, that they can go out to their friends and teach their friends, no, we don't play with guns. Guns are not toys. They're tools. And so that way the whole goal of what we're trying to do is just take that novelty away and showcase that, guns are not the issue in society. It's obviously, it's a lack of education. There's a lack of prosecution issue. There's lots of different things that go into this big picture when we talk about, firearms in the country. We have an estimated 450 million guns in this country, 110 million responsible law-abiding citizens that own firearms in this country. And so, we just need people to just take a deep breath, just know that this is a very common thing, is to talk about guns and gun safety with your kids, and to kind of embrace that and make sure that, this is really, really important stuff to talk about. A good analogy would be like the hot burner. The hot burner, you tell your child not to touch the hot burner, what's the first thing they do? They grab that hot burner, so that's how our kids learn, unfortunately. But, with a firearm, it could be fatal. And so that's why education is really, really important.
So can you give us like a few sort of specifics and principles that you use for teaching kids things? I mean, is there like sort of an outline, or is there like a step-by-step thing? Is it a multi-step monthly process? Like, how does this whole thing work?
So typically it's a 1-hour class when we're, in the classroom type setting, and we hold them at Cabela's. I was in a homeschool yesterday. I love the homeschools. Charter schools are really great, and I support them as best I can. And so we want to be a resource for those parents. And so we talk about, what to do if they come across that unsecured firearm. We also talk about how the firearm functions. So we're actually, because you'd be surprised how many kids get their information from either the internet, it could be video games, it could be social media, so it forms all of these young minds and their young world, their opinions on the world. And so, what we're trying to do is just showcase that this is reality. This is something that can be dangerous if you're not safe with it, but it's harmless if you treat it with respect. And so from that, we talk about online safety, video game violence, and how to, protect them from grooming, and trafficking and stuff like that. We also cover anti-bullying as well in the class. And so the whole goal is when the kids and the families leave our class is they have a better understanding of the threats that we're facing. And as technology evolves, so will these threats, and so will our message. Well, that's the benefit of being a small organization, is we can maneuver society and go where the threats are to the kids.
So why kids? I mean, I know you said, that something happened with your girlfriend, but is there I just get the feeling that something happened and there's a bigger picture here. Why do you start with kids like that and their families?
Well, because the Lord told me to do so. And it was in 2014. I was driving a dump truck in the middle of the night. I was working in a construction job, and there was a flash of light. And this flash of light said I had to protect the kids. And it was 3:00 in the morning. I didn't know what that meant. And so, but I woke up got off work at 6 a.m., went to bed till 8 a.m. And then I woke up like I was possessed. Like, what did that mean? And so that's, when I was talking about the research, looking at the NRA program, that's where that original idea came from, is from that flash of light. And that voice, I can't explain it, but it was something that directed me to get to this point. And so at this point, he's in control. And so I'm just here. He's given me the platforms and the microphones to speak into, so I can continue to do the work that we're doing.
Well,
Wow.
I wasn't expecting that for an answer.
Yeah. It's a crazy part, Rick, about that story I don't know if you remember from 2020, where we had the riots and stuff like that, where downtown Eugene, that intersection where I came through in that dump truck was actually set on fire in the middle of the night one time. And so I went down there and kind of just, because it was like a really important part of the story for me. And I wanted to go document it, and I did my first blog post about it. But it was sad to see the destruction and the carnage that came out of that situation, but that was really where it all started for me.
Well, I mean, what comes to mind is God used a burning bush for Moses and a burning dump truck for you.
Absolutely.
Which is absolutely spectacular. The thing that comes to mind the second you started talking about this is, to put May and I are Christians, and to kind of put an evangelistic spin on this. The key is, in these kind of outreaches, you don't want to just preach to the choir. You really want to kind of reach the unchurched in the gun world. Mm-hmm. And so, why do we have relationship counseling or sex education or predator education or any of these things to keep kids safe? The reason is because they're getting educated whether you like it or not. Right. So they're going to movies and they're learning that guns are great because violence is really cool. And we celebrate violence because human beings are, at their core to some degree violent. And they watch, like I remember the Saturday morning cartoons a million years ago when, Bugs Bunny would shoot people, or Elmer Fudd or whatever. And then the video games just ratchets that up to another level, right? I mean, there's kids that have never touched a firearm, may never fire one in their entire life, that know more about specific weapons platforms than most of us that have owned half of those weapons platforms, because it's so detailed in the video game world. And so you sit there and you go, this is a no-brainer thing to get into schools, because you can strip the politics away. You could say, we don't care if you love or hate guns. They're there. There's 450 million of them in the United States. They're not going anywhere, regardless of what, politician X, Y, or Z tells you. So you might as well deal with the problem. Just like, you can put end racism all you want all over the fields of the NFL. There's still racist pieces of crap in the world because humans are fallen by nature. So have you had any hope with sort of reaching kind of the quote other side with regards to your mission?
Yeah, I mean, we've made some big successes. I mean, obviously, I wrote a Senate bill in 2019 that would have authorized our program for all first graders in the public schools in Oregon. We tried again this year. I mean, our biggest challenge is people are fearful of what they don't understand. And so, it's our job. And that's why I'm glad to have this microphone here, is because it's our job to show them the value to their families, that even if they don't have guns, don't think for a second that your kids can't be exposed somewhere else. I mean, I see horror stories all the time about kids coming in contact at parks, on street corners. I've had kids that have found guns and couch cushions at play dates. I've had kids grab a rifle behind a door, and bring it out, that it's used for varmint control. So, we can no longer, with that many guns in society, we can no longer just keep our head in the sand and thinking this problem is never going to just go away. We have to actively do things that are different, that maybe people don't like or are afraid of because they've never had the experience, but we're proving that they do work. We have 28,000 kids through the program with 0 accidents, and that's, that says a lot. I want to reach 10 million kids or 20 million kids. That's how we move this needle in a way that we need it to go. And so it's just people, there's so much noise right now. There's so much noise, and the noise drowns out the people that are doing the work, and that's kind of the problem.
It's part of the problem too, Derek, that if you don't grow up in a home with guns, and then you're kind of afraid of them.
Absolutely.
I mean, I noticed this with myself and my wife. We have guns now, and we've learned how to shoot them. Took a class. I mean, so we have all that. But I didn't grow up with them, and I still see it, and I keep it in a drawer. You know, I have no kids in my house, and I keep it in my drawer, and I know, but I pull it out, and when I have to take it with me in case there's a bear or something like that, I'm not as comfortable with it. And I think that's what I love about what you do is you're getting kids so that they understand the power it has, but the power that you have and where not to touch. And with me, it's still kind of a scary thing. And I bet there's a lot of parents like that as well. Is that kind of part of what you guys address?
Yeah, absolutely. The whole point is we want to be a trusted resource for those kids, for the parents. And we want to, because sometimes, like yesterday when I was in class in the homeschool, there was a couple parents that didn't have firearms in the home, which I kind of pull the crowd. I want to know kind of where people are at, so I know how to deliver the message. Because, when I'm showing an AR-15, I don't want to put it in the face of somebody to show that it's clear. Somebody that is afraid of that type of firearm. And so I have to be really mindful of my audience and respectful of them, and understand that we all have different experiences when it comes to this situation, but they're giving me an hour of their time. And so I'm going to give them an hour of my time and make sure that we're all on the same page when we leave. Whether you like or don't like, I'm still going to do what I need to do to make sure that you have the best experience you can have, even if you're fearful, so that we just got to have this normalize this conversation. That's all we're trying to do.
Well, and it's interesting how that works, because May, when I told her I was buying a pistol, she almost lost her complete mind. Now she's like, doesn't leave
part of it. She just lost part of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
No, it says that is stupid. I hate guns. Guns are terrible. Like on and on. Right. I mean, typical Canadian, whatever. And now it's like she doesn't leave home without her trusty 380 feminine protection, shall we say.
Wow.
Yeah.
She's awesome. Badass. That girl's badass.
Yes. I've even actually gone out in the dark when, someone drove up to our house unannounced on our property, and the kids and I were home, and Tim was gone, and I did not like it because, they had the lights beaming into our giant picture windows just sitting there. So I went out packing. I told the kids, and, I had it kind of hidden, my hand in my back, and I'm like, eh.
Well, and then, of course, you told the kids, until you hear sounds of reloading, don't call the police.
But for me, it was a complete 180. And it wasn't until I kind of started to soften a little bit, but I took the class, and got my hands on this thing, which to me, and I understand, people that are fearful, you feel like it's a bomb that's going to go off in your hand. Like that's how in your brain you think this thing will just explode or randomly fire. And even now,
not unless you're Alec Baldwin.
True.
Sorry.
But for me, that's the psychological fear thing that, it's like a bomb that's just going to detonate whenever. And so until I learned to handle it like you would like a knife, a knife, it's not going to just fly around and cut people. You respect knives when you're using the tools. It's totally switched to the point now I'm a total convert. But back to, what I'm thinking of is with this program, I guess I can see the difference between, so there's hunter safety. I know so many people that have kids that have gone through kids hunter safety programs. So obviously this differs from that, and because hunter safety, I'm assuming, is more along the lines of how to stay safe in the woods, use your rifle, etc. This is quite different. Do the kids get to learn how to handle a gun when you're teaching them, or is it just sort of not a hands-on thing?
Yeah, so we have a couple different classes. We have the Kids Firearm Safety 1 class, which is, strictly accident prevention, which is what we did yesterday in that homeschool environment. And so with that class, we don't want them touching guns. We're teaching them what not to do. And typically, hunter safety, those kids are 10 to 12 years old when they're getting involved with hunter safety, and we're talking, we want our kids involved at 4 to 6, because that's when they're going to be most inquisitive. That's where they're going to be most vulnerable to an accident inside the home. And so that's why we're trying to get to those kids before that. And then we do offer live fire training for the kids as well. So we follow up with rimfire rifles, and so we get to reinforce the skills that we talk about in the first class with real guns on the range, under proper supervision. And we're teaching the parents how to teach their kids how to shoot. It's really such an amazing, wholesome environment for the kids to continue to grow. And we realize that it's not for everybody. Sometimes parents that are afraid of guns, they bring their kids one time just so their kids can understand the process of what happens when the gun goes off and the power that's involved with that. We're using rimfire, so it's not as intimidating like a centerfire rifle, but it gives them good repetitions and gives them a good foundation if they want to continue in the shooting sports, because now they know how this process works.
So Derek, you've said like a couple of times in here, we need to have this conversation. So define for me like the conversation and why the need for the conversation. What is that conversation? Because there's probably parents out here who don't, to people that don't have guns, but what is the conversation and why do we need to have it?
So right now with what's happening, I don't know if you're watching what's happening nationally, there is a lot of talk about gun control. You have a lot of people that are fundraising off of the idea of gun control. And my response to that is we have 22,000 laws on the books already, and we're not implementing and enforcing them already. So why are we going to add another law? It's not going to work. So, but there's such an emotional reaction from both sides. There's the people that don't like guns, that are afraid of guns, that want to take the guns. And so there's so much vitriol associated with that. And then you have the other side that says, I enjoy my guns. I'm not committing a crime, and I'm not going to give up my guns. And so, that's where I kind of feel like I'm in the middle, because I'm a man without a country, because I have this noise over here and I have this noise over here, and all I'm trying to do is say, if we talk to our kids and have an adult conversation with our kids about something that's a really important topic, this is how we're going to help society. And that's all I'm trying to do. And that's why, so it's just the divisiveness right now of the topic. And it doesn't need to be a divisive topic. We're okay. It's okay to not like guns. It's totally fine. That's your personal responsibility. It's your personal perception of guns. But I do have a right to have a firearm inside my home for lawful self-defense, or to educate my kids if I choose to do so. That's my right. I have a right to do so. And so, that's kind of what's being lost right now. It's just so much infighting. We don't need to fight about this topic. We just need to come together and understand that there's people out there that do care about the topic, and it's important to them and important to their organization. And, we just need to be able to offer our experience.
So if you get the kids to understand more safety, it's a way to counterbalance and maybe add to that conversation, right? Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a way, because we want to take away the fear. And when I'm working with older, like teenagers, I see a lot of stuff that's coming from the teachers in the public schools that are talking about they're afraid of guns because they're being told. A lot of it's coming from social media, their friends, the
That's
people that don't have. So there's a definitely a push to really kind of demonize lawful gun ownership. And so I think that's kind of counterproductive to the safety of the kids, because if we demonize something that's completely normal, we make it less likely for the parents to educate those kids. And we could also show that that's actually makes those kids more vulnerable, because they don't have these life-saving skills that they need to be taught.
Well, what I kind of look at, my own beliefs, and, you take this to kind of the other side. So you think of, obviously there's all this stuff about sexuality that everyone is losing their marbles over. And some of it is completely insane, but some of it's not. And so, May and I, from our personal beliefs, we were abstinent till we got married. And most people would say, you are completely insane. That's crazy. And you sit there and you go, well, it worked for me, and it's a free country. And I'm not telling you that you have to obey my moral code.
Right.
But at the same time, when you go into a school and you teach an abstinence only class to 1,000 kids that have a wildly different moral upbringing than you, to not address the fact that, teenagers are going to have like lots of sex is kind of nuts. And it's kind of, and then, you use this example. the teachers are like, I'm scared of guns. Well, that's like me dressing up in my best, Hutterite costume and saying I'm scared shitless of sex. Like, it doesn't matter what your fears are. It matters what the reality of the world that you live in is. I mean, it's most Amish people are probably way healthier. Most people aren't going to become Amish. I mean, that's the way it is. And so you have to, there's a pragmatic aspect to this that you can't forget. Kids are going to have sex, and there's 450 million guns. You're not going to make kids not have sex, and you're not going to make 450 million guns go away without kicking everyone's door down and essentially having, the Gestapo do it. It's impossible. So the only option left is educate yourself to keep your kids safe.
Well, yeah, because Tim, like what other topic? Well, nowadays we do this, but I mean, back in the day, when you're afraid of something, you don't avoid it, you learn about it.
Exactly.
And you learn how to respect it and treat it rather than just, because your point is, Tim, I love that. It's like, it's not going to go away. So you deal with it. And this is what Derek's talking about. We teach you how to not be afraid of it. So then you can still be a gun owner or a non-gun owner, but at least you're not afraid of it. So you can make an educated response rather than an off the handle, top of your, they're bad. And, because we really do have a culture who now believes that a gun by itself can kill a person. Guns kill. Guns cannot kill because this human thing called a finger has to pull the frickin' trigger. And we've created a culture of people that think that inanimate object laying on my bed can kill somebody. It can't kill somebody unless somebody picks it up and makes a choice, or in your case, what you're teaching that, so it's not an accidental choice to kill somebody. That's powerful. I love that. I mean, I think but why don't the educators want that? It's very interesting to me.
Well, we could put our tinfoil hats on and understand, it's because
I have my see that?
No, you do. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, that's my tinfoil hat right there.
I feel that they don't want the truth getting out. They want to control this narrative in a way. So when people are afraid and uneducated, they're easier to be controlled. And so what we're doing is we're teaching kids gun safety. We're empowering our youth to make good, safe decisions. We're opening up their minds. And that, that's dangerous for some people because those kids are less likely to be controlled going into the future.
So I want to know so obviously we're talking about fear of guns, don't like guns. And I want to know what are some of the misconceptions or things that drive the fear. Like what you said, is it the fear of it just going off? Like, I mean, it sounds dumb, but that's the kind of irrational fear that I had, like literally that this thing was so fragile that, if I just touched it the wrong way, it would go off. Yeah. I mean, that's irrational, but that's just what happened. What are some of do you know what the barriers are when people like, I don't like guns, I'm afraid of them, like what they talk about? Yeah. What are those?
Yeah. So we call them hoplophobes, right? So hoplophobe is somebody that has a fear of inanimate object, which is a firearm. And so typically there's a lot of group thought here. There's no independent thinking. So a lot of it is they get information from either social media, their friends, it could be their peers, it could be a teacher. And so that's influencing that opinion. I'm being told to be afraid of something and part of it is as we've become lazy. Like we don't do our own independent research. We just believe we're fed. And so, that's what makes everything they talk about, assault rifles. There's no such thing as an assault rifle. It's called an AR-15. It's a modern sporting rifle. AR does not stand for assault rifle. It stands for Armalite rifle. And so there's a lot of misinformation there. And so I always have one in every class. And I had a lady yesterday in class that asked me, why does anybody need one of those? And I was like, ooh, pick me, and so I said, well, we have many reasons for this rifle. There's 40 million rifles in this country, semi-automatic rifles, and they're responsible for less than 1% of all violent crimes. So we're talking on average about 400 people lose their lives to a rifle every year, and that's of all rifles. And obviously we don't want to see anybody lose their lives, but it's not the big scary thing that everybody makes it out to be in the media. And so, with that, we talk about, that gun is great for hunting. It's great for sporting purposes. You can shoot 3-gun, you can compete with it. It's also great for home defense, depending on that situation. You have a bear situation in Montana, you might need a 30-round magazine to help keep yourself safe. And so that's why this gun is more relevant now than it's really ever been in our history, because what's happening, when we saw what happened under, in 2020 with all the lockdowns and all of that stuff, we had groups of people that were, rioting. And so the whole point of this is giving us the ability to be able to protect ourselves if we need to be. And so it's not the big scary thing that it's made out to be. But it's something that is, we just got to figure out how to keep some people from getting through the cracks and getting hold of these. I mean, there is an issue there. I can admit that, and I'm not going to be so tone deaf to say that, there's people out there that have gotten them that shouldn't have them, but I don't know, we already have checks in place. So I understand why these things are getting through the cracks.
So when you see Measure 114 pop up in Oregon, that's got to throw a little bit of fear in front of you, huh? That people won, that they responded the way they did and voted for it because of misinformation, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was.
Explain Measure 114 for our listeners that are not from this state or even country. What's going on?
So Measure 114 was a voter approved initiative. It was written by the Giffords PAC. And so if you're familiar with the Giffords, the Giffords for gun safety, they're a big anti-gun group. And so they tasked Lift Every Voice Oregon with them gathering the necessary signatures to get this thing on the ballot. It got on the ballot last year, and it was passed by less than 1%. It was about 0.6% in Oregon. And so what this did is this is, now it's been challenged in court multiple times, but what it does is it creates a permit to purchase situation. And it also makes basically every magazine that has a detachable base plate illegal under this law. And so it makes, good people criminals overnight if this thing goes into effect. And the way it was sold was totally misinformation. And there was a lot of, it's going to save lives, it's going to do all these magical things, yet the law enforcement does not have a way to enforce. Law enforcement does not have the staffing to even do what's required of them under the statute, so we're probably over $2 million in litigation costs at this point, and we've done nothing to save an actual life. And we're taking money away from, drug abuse and mental health issues and the homelessness. So it's been a really, really bad thing for Oregon.
So with the permit though, you get a free COVID shot, don't you? Because that's also safe and effective.
Oh God.
Oh, really? I'll have to add that to my 10 that I already have.
Tim, it's not the shot; it's a booster.
Oh, that's right.
Shot is
because everybody's already
on vaccine all in one sentence.
God, and you're a doctor.
I know.
So
I just play one on TV.
A news anchor is telling you doctoral things.
Yeah.
My job never ends, Cough.
Job security.
There you go. I like to play devil's advocate. And so if I was someone from the other side and still thinking this cute little Tiffany colored gun that I do own now was bad, the people that see these ARs or think automatic assault rifles, etc. I guess in my head, you can say, all right, this is why we have them. This is how they work. They're really not that dangerous. But do you think that these people are thinking, well, I've seen Rambo. I watched all these shows on TV. I've seen these video games. And to me, it looks like if it gets in the hands of the wrong person, it's a way for them to kill more people quickly. And we see school mass shootings and things happening all the time that the wrong people get a hold of this and you just can kill. It's more dangerous than it is positively helpful. Does that ever come up?
So hold that thought, Derek, just a second. This is a really good place. What part of what I want you guys to do is see Tim and May and understand what they do. And this is a great place to cut me off. And you guys go over to Tim and May, to BS Free MD, if you're watching this on Rick Dancer, Get Real with Rick Dancer, and you go over to their show, you can watch the continuation. Because I didn't want to go. I was just like, oh, it's 33 minutes. I want to stay. This is like such a great conversation. But I want my viewers to go watch Tim and May and see what they're doing. So I'll have some of this on my show, but the rest of it, to get all the rest of the juicy details, they'll need to go over to BS Free MD and find out more.
Well, you could stay, Rick, and just keep quiet, but you know, you and Tim.
Oh, yeah, Rick Dancer, stay.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Quiet. That is not going to happen. Thank you, Derek. That was so interesting, and I really hope you good luck with your program. And Tim and May, I'll see you next week. But beam me up, Scotty.
Pearson Rabbit's story begins with Dr. Stephanie Pearson, a passionate OBGYN at the height of her career. But when a shoulder injury struck during a precipitous delivery, her dreams were shattered, leaving her unable to practice medicine. Determined to make a difference, Stephanie became an advocate for her peers, guiding them through the complex disability process. Alongside insurance expert Scott Ravitz, Stephanie founded Pearson Ravitz, a company determined to approach insurance differently. Together, they set their mission to educate and empower physicians to protect their most valuable asset, their income, and the most important people in their life, their family.
Today, Pearson Ravitz serves the medical community in all 50 states. At Pearson Ravitz, they understand the unique concerns of physicians. Physician-founded and physician-focused, Pearson Ravitz builds human connections before they create quotes. Life can change in an instant. It's hard to imagine that a sudden illness or injury could leave you and your family in a devastating financial situation. But with a little planning and guidance, you can prepare for every possibility. Visit PearsonRavitz.com today to schedule your consultation with the Pearson Ravitz advisor. All right, so
It's so quiet now.
imagine that. Well, we've still got party number 3 here who can make enough noise for the two of them.
If Rick's in the background, he is uploaded in case he cares.
All right, so Derek, why don't you take it away and answer or let our listeners know why, or not why, but how, what about those people that think that we have so many mass shootings, that it gets in the hands of the wrong people, that how can it positively be a good thing for those using it safely versus, like, really does the risk outweigh the benefit?
Well, I think what's really, really important is we have to think logically. We have to quit thinking emotionally about the situation. When we look at the data would prove with 48 million school children in this country, our kids have, a greater chance of being struck by lightning than getting hurt at school. Okay. So we need to quit terrorizing our children and making them fearful to go to school. Obviously we have to do things to protect them while they're at school. That's one thing that's really, really lacking, especially here in Oregon, is the fact that we don't have armed security for our kids. Our most valuable resource in this country is our children. Why aren't we protecting them the same way we do politicians or money or any other parts of society? So that's my biggest kind of pushback there is until we start dealing with the root cause of some of these things and doing things to really fix the situation, we're never going to ever have a positive outcome. And so a lot of it is people are fearful because it's just where they're getting their news, their different media sources, so.
And I can't remember the exact stats and data. I'd have to look again. You might know that better than me. But if you look at drownings and other childhood accidents, and motor vehicle accidents and death, it's still higher than firearms.
Oh, actually, bathtubs.
Bathtubs, yes.
Bathtubs for infants are really are profoundly dangerous. And just like stairs are for people over 65. But it's interesting though too, because the other part of that argument, I think, is, just because a tool is super effective and bad people can do bad things with them, people have been doing bad things with really good tools for a long time. Take, for instance, cars. You can drive over people. Did that happen? Absolutely. Where, the whole Charlottesville thing that Trump got in trouble for. I mean, so that argument in and of itself, I think, is just sort of a straw man. But that being said, if there's bad people with AR-15s, part of the solution from my perspective is we just need more good people with AR-15s. I mean, the solution to the problem is sometimes, the same thing as, kind of what the problem is. And
I was going to say that it's what gets sold and not sensationalized.
No, sensationalized.
It's
TV,
very sensationalized.
You hear about Tim used to skydive. You hear about the skydiver that dies, and it's like, oh, skydiving's horrible. I'm like, well, people die every day going to work in their car, but you don't hear about every single accident. It's the same with childhood drowning, accidental deaths, but you hear about, and there's so much media coverage, of course, about the big gun violence, not this inner city Chicago stuff that goes on all the time. So we get this biased view fed to us about what's dangerous, and then our opinions form.
But that's exactly. But I love the skydiving analogy, because there's usually between 5 and 15 skydive fatalities a year. They're almost all very experienced jumpers flying very high performance parachutes, and almost always, virtually all of them are flying under an absolutely correctly inflated, normally flying parachute. They just have pilot error. They're trying a maneuver that they shouldn't. That's the real reality. There's about 50,000 people, and there has been for almost the entire history of automobiles, that are killed a year in cars. So if people were killed by guns in the same way that people were killed in cars, they wouldn't be news stories at all, because there would be no way to sensationalize something that, there are some profoundly violent places in the world where people are killed with absolute routine, and you just kind of get used to it, which sounds horrific, but it's true. We take for granted the fact that about 40 to 50,000 people are going to die in automobile wrecks a year, because no one wants to not drive. So that the stuff, by definition, what I'm saying is usually the stuff that gets most sensationalized is A, sensational, and B, not super common.
Yeah. And it's a hard topic. And at the end of the day, none of us want to see anybody get hurt. I mean, that's, we want everybody to be happy, successful, live free, and, there's a lot of stuff that affects the mind, and there's a lot of mental health issues out there. There's a lot of people that are struggling, and it's because of stuff they've had to go through the past couple of years. We have a huge drug epidemic. I mean, we lost, 1,300 people to fentanyl poisoning in the last year here in Oregon, so there's a lot of things that are really bad for society. And so it would be nice for once to actually, see some positive, that are people that are trying to do the work to actually help this situation. And that's what we're trying to do.
And so speaking of positive, do you have any, just sort of off the top of your head, kind of positive stories that have come out of this program that you're doing that you can think of, like off the top of your head, something that happened or how it impacted someone in a really cool way?
Well, I'll tell you. So, one of my, my latest heroes is one of my friends, and he came with his father about a year ago, and they walked in, and I didn't know he was joining us, but he showed up with a cane, and he was blind. And so typically what I'm teaching kids not to touch guns, because I don't want them handling guns. In his situation, his eyes were his fingers. And so we had to change our tactic. And so we had to actually physically help him. Obviously, Dad and I cleared the gun to make sure the gun was clear. But we actually helped him feel where the trigger guard was, where the hammer was on different guns, so he can actually commit to memory if he was ever put in a position where he had to find a gun. So he was blind. And so, from that, he joined us on the range, and we taught him how to shoot. So we built a custom rifle for him, so he could participate just like any other kid. And this kid is my hero. And it just goes to show, and we're talking about inclusion, it's our job as an organization to give every kid the same opportunity. So if we have to build a custom rifle so this kid can participate just like any other kid, then that's what we'll do. And so from that, we're able to develop a kind of an adaptive part of what we do. And so, that's where we're going to reach kids that never thought they would have this opportunity, that are going to have the opportunity. And so we stopped a school shooting locally because of a kid that had been through our anti-bullying program. There was a gun in a backpack on the way to school. It was that close. and it's stuff like this that never hits the newspapers, which we're glad, because if it doesn't hit it's, I don't want to read about these kids in the newspaper. I would rather get an email from a parent and say, hey, this is what happened. We are so thankful. Keep going, and so everything that we try to put out is a positive thing. We want to, we understand how social media can affect people's mental health. And so we want to be part of that solution, make sure that whatever we put out is positive and uplifting. So that's kind of a couple of good stories.
I love that. I mean, you're right. The problem, there's just this double-edged sword about sharing those positive stories, because, the more you do, then people think, oh my gosh, it's happening all around. It's a scarier world we live in than I thought. But yet on the flip side, you're like, look at how this program's working. It is working. It's a positive thing. And so you want to try to reinforce that. But then there's always the freaking people out situation, which I don't know.
So in your, I know that you have 3 or 4 different child-based programs, from the safety, avoid the gun, talk to an adult, that kind of thing, to actually shooting classes. And so how much of the kind of self-defense awareness, anti-bullying, predation kind of comes into that? Because I found in the training that we had done, the firearm training is great. But the mindset training, as far as this is how you avoid an attack, this is how you think of scenarios. I used to drive my kids crazy. We'd go on vacation. We'd be in a Starbucks. I'd say, somebody comes in here with a gun. Where are you going to go? How are you going to leave? How are you going to protect yourself? We were in a crowded New York subway on the 5th of July after a Yankees game. I said, someone starts freaking out and running, or you hear gunshots, how are you going to save yourself? I mean, they're like, my dad's an idiot. But but if you don't think about that stuff, you just become one of the sheeple that gets trampled by the crowd. So how much of the sort of situational awareness, self-preservation training is there?
So
if somebody desired that.
So at this point, very little. I mean, we have a new teen empowerment class, which will cover that. We're still in the beta phase, the beta testing part of that, and it's going to talk about, it's going to have teen suicide prevention. It's going to be situational awareness. It's going to talk about online safety, cyberbullying, anti-bullying, stuff like that. So we're working on that. When it comes to the stuff that we do on the range, it's very vanilla. It's very like about respect for the firearm, good repetitions. We're not trying to teach young children like the self-defense, because that's not really, I feel that that's not really my position. That's more, I can help influence the parents to do that. But I feel from a foundational standpoint where we have to be careful with the way we present the information. So I definitely don't want to scare people away by, going that route, so I'm kind of careful. We're still trying to figure out what that looks like going forward, so, but I like what you're doing, like what you're doing to prepare your kids. Like that is the parent's job. That's a really, really good thing is to make sure that your kids are prepared for the world when they're away from you.
Well, maybe the solution to this, because we interviewed a pediatrician, and she just said, me diet counseling children is worthless because they don't go to the grocery store. And so she started an entire kind of outreach practice where her mission is to teach adults how to feed children appropriately so that
wow, that's
part
amazing.
Of the obesity epidemic. And I'm like, well, maybe the real solution is there should be a parent. I mean, you could leave firearms entirely out of it. Just absolutely. A situational awareness class for adults to be able to train their own kids. Because, if an intruder comes in the middle of the night, do you have a code word and a place to go to keep your family safe? I mean, we lived out in the country. We had, not quite, but almost fire drills for an invasion. Because I'm like, there's only going to be 2 people here that are going to potentially defend this. And it's going to be May and I, because the sheriff's not going to be there for 25 or 30 minutes. Yeah. And so, I mean, to me, it's just common sense. You have CO2 detectors and fire alarms in your house. Like, why wouldn't you?
We do it when you get on an airplane. Every time you check your exit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you count the number of rows to the exit, because
at least we do. But
that's why we've never died in a plane crash.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I thought it's because planes are safer now than they used to be.
Well, yeah,
there
you
you go.
think? Like, holy moly.
So,
Yeah.
no, that's a great point. I'm writing a couple notes down here because there's things, because I have a captive audience with those parents, and so what I'm doing now, because of what's been happening, is I'm talking about ballistic panels too in the classes. Like, and obviously I'm trying to talk over the kids so the kids don't necessarily know what I'm talking about, but I want the parents to kind of think about some kind of passive security for them, passive insurance, because the schools are not doing the right thing. I mean, the schools, we should be hardening the schools. We should be making sure the doors are locked. I mean, and if they're not doing that, as parents, we can incorporate a ballistic panel in our backpacks. It weighs next to nothing. And it's just a form of insurance, so.
Well, yeah. And,
Interesting.
the other thing that happens, because the Virginia Tech shooting just absolutely made me insane, because if you've ever shot a firearm where you're complete, like especially a pistol, where you're entirely de-stressed, you're in a safe environment, the range is completely controlled, it's still really hard to shoot stuff that's 15 or 20 yards away. Like, it's not, it isn't this Jack Reacher, knocking a gun out of somebody's hand from 75 yards with a 9mm Glock. I mean, that just doesn't happen. And you sit there and you think, this guy lined up big, beefy football player styled students, and they just obeyed him and were executed executioner style. When if you had a backpack filled with books or a desk and you ran at him, in an erratic manner, you have virtually a 100% chance of not getting a fatal wound and potentially saving all your classmates. And all it takes is information. You don't need a gun. You just need to understand the situation and understand, if you shot before, how hard it is to actually hit anything with a pistol.
Well, and a lot of these people that are doing these horrible things, they want notoriety. That's all. They want their name and lights. So the best thing that we could do as a society going forward is to quit publicizing it. Like, I think in Canada, they have a law where it's illegal for them to publicize the shooter if something like that were to happen in the newspaper. We should do the same. We should not be selling ads. We should not be, the media profits off of all this stuff. It's disgusting. We need to quit that. Okay. We need to quit giving these people their 15 minutes of fame because they feel isolated. They feel alone. And they feel that this is their only way to leave their mark on the country. And that's gross. And so until we look in the mirror and do some really soul searching about the real issues that we're having here, we're never, ever going to fix this situation. And, there's just so much money involved. That's the problem. You can look back to them, so.
Well, right. And school, let's be honest, if you're anti-gun, a school shooting is an absolute fundraising bonanza. So why would the media that is largely from, one political bend change not publicizing that? It doesn't make any sense. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like we've gone down the medical freedom rabbit hole, and there's lots of guys that I read, every time somebody dies suddenly, it's the vaccine. Well, is it every time? Well, of course it's not. People died suddenly at 43 for random reasons since the dawn of humans. Now, is it more? Is it something we should look at? Is it a question we should ask? Absolutely. I think that's true. But at the same time, like, I try to look at my own heart and my own life, and where I'm kind of the guy that has, I have my own very strong beliefs, both, spiritually, politically, pragmatically, but you kind of got to put yourself in the chair of the other side and say, okay, look, ignorance isn't a reason for doing something dumb, because you can fix ignorance. It's not that hard to fix.
It's, yeah, I agree with that. And it's funny is the people that try to, impose this stuff on all of us have armed security, and they have behind these big gated communities. And so, my question for them is what's my family's life worth? What's my life worth? I feel that my family's life is valuable. And so we should have the right to be able to protect ourselves and keep each other safe, so that's where this whole conversation breaks down. And so that's why it's really, really important that it's okay to have differing opinions. It's totally normal. Okay. It's how we get through those situations and have these conversations in a way that it's going to get more people involved in a way that we can actually help fix the problems that we're facing.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I go back to drug abuse,
Mhm.
and you sit there and you think, if you had the conversation with your kid that said, never ever never smoke weed and never drink ever, what are the chances of that happening if you make a really big deal about it and tell them how horrible it is? You have
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
100% chance of them experimenting. I
Yeah.
mean, virtually. I mean, that's the way it works. You're much better off to say, hey, these are things that make people feel good, and but they also make people really out of control. So there's a reason why we don't do this until we're 21 years old. I mean, they can just have the conversation. I mean, it's the same. The way we broached sex with our kids is, it's really awesome, and it's so awesome that God gave it to us for a special relationship. It's not that it's bad or scary or dirty. It's that it's so good that you preserve it. I have classic cars. I don't use them mud bogging because they're so awesome.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think another thing that we didn't really touch on is the video games. The video
Wow.
games
Yeah.
are horrific for young minds, and that's why we talk about in our classes is, there's studies that Dillon and Bushman did one in 2017 that talked about the impact of violent media to young minds, and we see that. I see kids that come in at 6 years old and they're like, "Oh, that's an M16," it's like, no, what do you know about this? Oh, this is an M16. It's fully automatic. I shoot it from the hip like this, right? And I'm like, where did you learn that? And he's like, oh, well, Call of Duty. It's like, you're 6 years old. Okay, so the problem is parents have to start being parents. Parents have to understand that it's not easy to be a parent today in today's day and age, because there's so much information coming at their kids, and so they have to protect their minds and their innocence from Snapchat, TikTok, video games, violent video games. Those are the thing. Moderation is really, really important. I saw a study the other day about the average American kid spends 50 hours a week on video games. And we wonder why some of this stuff is happening is because they are in an altered sense of reality.
So 50 hours on video games, not just screen time.
That's on video games, yeah, from what I saw.
Dang.
Dude.
And there's like
50 hours in 20 years.
Yeah, it affects their sleep cycles. So some of these kids will play till the wee hours of the morning and then sleep for a couple hours, then go to school, so it's like they're never unattached from technology. So the best thing we can do is get our kids outside and teach our kids to use their imagination, play with our kids outside. That's why getting involved in the shooting sports is great, because it gives them safety and discipline, respect for firearms, and gives them something that they can focus on that's outside of tech. And so that's something that we really should be talking about. The video games have a warning label for a reason. And everybody talks about the gun lobby, right? There's this gun lobby. They always demonize the gun lobby. There's actually a video game lobby. Okay.
Absolutely.
So the video game lobby, okay. In the United States, the gun lobby spends on average $70 billion. Okay. That's what their net worth is $70 billion a year. Okay. The video game lobby, their net worth in our country is about $96 billion. Okay. If we look at it worldwide, the video game lobby is at about $260 billion. Okay. That's worldwide.
I'm sorry, Derek. That's just lobbying. That's not like the amount of money they sell. That's just
that's their I call them the lobby because that's how much revenue they bring in annually. Okay. And so they introduce stuff in DC to prevent any kind of regulation coming to restrict their ability to market to either kids or teens, so they want us all distracted by other stuff, and then we have the chaos in the streets, and they don't want to take any kind of responsibility for the behaviors that they're creating in society. So that's the problem that I have
I mean that it's the low hanging.
Well, we talk about that all the time. I mean, just the video games plus what's on TV, but the whole desensitization, and then there's the adults playing the video games and letting their kids just hang out and watch. So to me, it's like, well, what's the difference if you're watching a raunchy X-rated movie or porn with your kid running around? I think, I mean, I'm all for having more.
Well, there's probably a difference, but yes, I get your hyperbole.
Well,
and we have to understand too, that's how some of these predators are actually reaching the kids as well, is through the chats and the messaging, so there's a lot of bad stuff involved with video games. So that's what we talk about and we talk about, how trafficking and grooming, and there's like in our classes, we talk the fact when we're online, there's no such thing as a secret online from our parents, right? There's no secrets online. The only secrets that we keep are what's called surprises. So it would be a birthday present for you. There's no secrets online. There's only secrets when there's surprises. And we talk about that. So
I love that. That's perfect.
But the same thing, like, just like I would encourage people that are ignorant of guns and gun safety to embrace this. At the same time, it's super easy to say, okay, you're never getting a video, you're never getting a PlayStation, or you're never getting an Xbox or whatever. I mean, really, I think that parents should probably play some of this stuff with the kids to figure it out, to moderate, what's in the home, what's not in the home. Because I guarantee you, the second they're at their friend's house that has that, they're going to be playing it continuously because, forbidden fruit is all the sweeter.
It was that way when we were growing up.
Well, right. I mean, I remember there was a very austere religious order that lived in rural Canada, and I was doing a rotation in one of these prairie cities delivering babies, and they had an old hospital wing that they used so people that came from out of town could stay there when their family members were, having surgery or recovering or whatever. Well, so this order had no televisions. They had no radios. They had absolutely no electronic anything. Well, I ran into one of them because they could use the interns lounge that we were using. And this guy watched television continuously because, of course, he didn't have it. So, like, literally, you'd go up there and he was there. I mean, if he wasn't with his, ailing family member, he was 100% watching television.
Yeah. So, moderation.
So why don't you share with our listeners and everyone how they can get involved or support your organization?
Okay, great. So we're a 501c3 nonprofit. So we're always looking for, support from the communities to kind of help us. We don't charge for our classes. And it's something, because we modeled this similar to water safety, is every kid in this country should learn how to be safe around a firearm. And that's what the acronym is on the Kids Safe Foundation. It's, safety around firearms education. And so you can find us on our website, kidssafefoundation.org. There's 2 S's there. And we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're also on YouTube as well. So you guys can find us there. There's a link on our website where you guys can donate to help our cause to reach more kids. And every penny stays within our program to help make sure that we get to that next class to make sure we reach those kids.
Is this just Oregon right now?
So I'm in talks. We're trying to go national. Everything comes down to funding. And so I'm in talks with Wyoming and Florida. And so we'll be hopefully in 2024, be going to those states as well to increase our outreach opportunities.
Well, we'll be there in 2.5 weeks. So maybe we can give you a good word.
Wow.
So what part of Florida are you guys going to?
Sarasota.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good deal.
Well, Derek, thanks for being here on the show with us and the partnering bit that we did with Rick Dancer. Big thank you, and for helping sort of really shed light and great information on a really critical topic, obviously, about kids' gun safety, and for your dedication to keeping kids safe. That's awesome. And so, we're trying to remember, it's not about politics, right? It's about safety and the kids.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Well, that wraps up another episode of BS Free MD. A big thank you to our guest, Derek LeBlanc, for shedding light on the crucial topic of gun safety for kids and for his dedication to keeping our children safe. Remember, it's not about politics. It's about safety. No truer words could be spoken. To our listeners, if you found this episode valuable, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback helps us continue bringing you meaningful conversations without the BS. Super helpful. Rate 5 stars and comment, which helps the algorithm. All right. Till next time, stay safe, stay smart, and of course, always stay BS free.
It's no secret that medicine is a bit uptight.
That's why Tim and I created BS Free MD, to mix things up a little and have fun in the process. Besides, we are having these exact same discussions all the time, so we thought we might as well invite everyone to the party. If you really like us, you can get plenty more and maybe see one of Tim's cool tattoos on our Instagram or Facebook pages at BS Free MD. See you next time.
But we try to keep BS Free MD as raw and real as possible. We can't be held responsible for any medical decisions or discussions had as a result of what you've heard on the show. We know, bummer. But the truth is, we really do care about your questions. So feel free to reach out to us by email at doc@bsfreemd.com.